Bienvenidas a Mesa para una. Estoy hoy muy encantada de teneros conmigo, a todas vosotras, y es porque voy a hacer mi primera entrevista en inglés con vosotras. Sí. ¿Cómo va a ser esto? El tema es que tengo una invitada especial, pero que digamos que su castellano no sería el mejor del mundo para tener una entrevista. Entonces, como considero que es una persona muy interesante y el tema que nos va a traer es cómo ser directora de estrategia, que es como muy en sí mismo interesante, en una empresa donde está no solo en remoto, sino deslocalizada. Sus equipos con los que trabaja están en Asia. Lo que voy a hacer es lo siguiente. Voy a básicamente poner la entrevista en inglés íntegra y luego al final os voy a hacer un resumen de lo que serían sus comentarios más destacados. En la cajita de descripción vais a poder ver el timeline, como siempre, para que podáis directamente saltar a la parte de resumen de castellano. O si os veis con ganas de seguir la conversación en inglés, podéis continuar con la conversación en inglés y cuando vuelva a aparecer mi bonita voz en castellano, pues podéis saltarlo directamente, porque básicamente voy a decir un poquito lo mismo con mis propias palabras. Entonces, que nadie se asuste, pero vamos a empezar y voy a introducir a nuestra invitada en inglés. Hasta ahora, amigas. Nos vemos luego con el resumen. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first podcast in English. Today we will have with us an inspirational professional. I was lucky enough to work with her. She's now doing faces, just for the ones that cannot see her, in a project that she was leading. And since then, I am always nagging her to take in consideration any of her advice, comments, or suggestions for my career, and also for my mental health, to be honest. So I would like to give a warm applause to Sarah.
Hello, thanks for having me.
I'm super excited to have you as a guest and my first guest in English. So I think that's extraordinary. I hope that you're the first and not the last one. So fingers crossed. Anyway, so I have invited you today to share with this cozy audience. Remember that you are with friends, so don't worry. So about your professional experience, like how do you start professionally your career? At which professional point you are now, and what's next, or at least what you think is next. But that's the overall idea for you and for the listeners. Before we go any further, would you mind to explain people why you and me are we talking in English? Since I do the podcast in Spanish, I think it would be interesting to set the context, like why this woman is talking with the other one in English.
Because I'm Italian and my Spanish wouldn't be good enough for this conversation. So English is, I think, probably the best option for us.
Well, I think so. I mean, maybe we can improve in other sessions that we talk, like practice our Italian skills and also our Spanish skills. But anyway, let me know, how did you start professionally? Because I know that you started as something different that you are now. So could you walk me through your delightful career path in this case?
Yeah. Where should I start? Like I'll be quick, but I think I want to start from high school.
Go for it. I mean, there's a podcast. Come on, we are not filming or anything. Go.
When I was in high school, I was very jealous of those people that know exactly what they want to be when they grow up. I was not one of those. I was a bit of a nerd already. I really enjoyed having good grades and knowing all the answers, but I was struggling to find my path. So I decided to study art. That was not a very popular choice, clearly for the, I think, career perspectives. A lot of people during my degree were telling me, you will never have a job, you will struggle with money. The typical cliche. And I think that created in me that, I think, desire to prove myself and show them that I could actually do well. I didn't have to comply to the, I would say, the typical career that you can have in a small town like where I come from, where basically being successful mean a doctor, being a lawyer, or an accountant. Those are the, I would say, safer choice.
Absolutely.
Not easier, but safer.
Yeah.
So when they were right, after I finished my I really struggled to get a job, and I was terribly underpaid. I won a grant to study in New York. And that changed completely. Being exposed to New York in my 20s changed completely my mindset about what was possible and which kind of person I wanted to be. I went from thinking like someone that comes from a small town with where you know everyone, and you think there are basically 5 jobs available, to living in New York, exposed to a lot of like inspiration and people having 2 jobs to support themselves, big dreams, the American dreams, whatever. In my 20s was a bit of a revolution. So while I was there, I then stumbled somehow into tech. I was still in the art field, but I started to realize that I was actually better at managing the website or the blogs of the artists rather than cleaning up their paintings and actually restoring them.
I cannot see you, honestly. So I know that you would be really efficient about that, but now that you're mentioning that, it's like, what a waste of her talent.
It was actually a really cool, my first gig in New York. My boss was a lady, and she was restoring like painting that costed like 1 million, 10 million. So even touching those things was such a like life experience. Instead of seeing those stuff in a museum, like having your gloves and touching them, and I think was incredible.
Wow. That was a really big responsibility, honestly. Now what you are doing, I think that it feels small, to be honest.
I hope we had an insurance.
Wow, that's amazing. So you were mentioning that you just jump into tech, and from there?
From there, I think I had all sorts of job titles. I think I had like webmaster when that thing was a thing.
I don't remember that.
Webmaster. So we're the first people that made website when you couldn't build simple website like with Squarespace. It was before that.
Yeah. Oh my God. True.
I actually can code, but terribly. So then I got interested in, probably because of my background, into the visual design part, still linked to digital. And then I moved to Australia and I took UX training. So UX stands for user experience training. So in Sydney, I took this training, and it was one of the first batch ever in Australia, because like now it was maybe 10 years ago, user experience was not mainstream yet.
No. That's true.
And then from then, I think the story, the pattern is that I always wanted to solve bigger problems. I got bored about solving like visual design problems, and I wanted to be the one deciding how things were supposed to work. And now, following the same path, I'm more into not how to execute the work, but what should we be working on? What is going to make a difference? So I think solving bigger problems give me the motivation to like evolve my career.
Yeah, makes total sense. I just love when I ask people about this in this podcast. You're not the first one that I ask this, because I suddenly discovered more things about them as humans, because they started to talk about the past when they were young. And it's like, you were in New York, and I knew that, but I was not aware that you all were also were in Sydney. And I was thinking like, now your English makes total sense. It's like, now I know something else more. And it's extremely interesting. What you were saying, I think is also really important, like how things lead you to other things and how you can solve problems in a different way, and how one thing leads you to another. And that gives me to, or that leads me to the question, like how, or which is your role currently? And if you have to explain that to your grandma, how would you explain that? Because that's the tricky part, right? You can say the fancy word first if you want, and then we can try to figure out how to explain that to a grandma.
So how I would explain it on LinkedIn, maybe we can start there.
Wow.
I would say that I work very close to the CIO of a public traded consultancy. And my role is to support the strategy and execution for our IT department. So if I had to explain it to my grandma, like how that looked like is that I spend a lot of time in my pajama in front of my laptop. So I'm still not sure my mom believes that I'm actually working.
And yeah, I think you miss one part, and it's like I work with my pajama and my laptop, talking all the time with people, trying to solve trying to solve things that are super obvious for me.
I wish. No. Sometimes it's really hard. But maybe how to explain it to a grandma is that now companies have a lot of technology, and even the company I work for has a lot of technology. So I'm basically one of the manager or leaders of the technology department of my organization. I don't know.
I think that's good enough. I mean, I think that you can put that in your CV, like a summary. Summary from the future. I love that you were mentioning that lead part, and you consider yourself as a lead, which is something that I talk in this podcast, because I think that we women, or at least is my point of view, we have not have a lot of reference on that area, especially at least on my working experience. And we are having also here another layer about complexity and challenges, because we are working in remote. And in your case, you're working remote with also teams that are not located in Europe. They are in India and China. So there's also cultural differences, and also different timing. And that's something that I would like to talk a little bit more with you. Like, how is leading in remote? What are the difference for yourself, and how is leading in remote with these different cultures and different time schedules? So I don't know what's the first thing that you want to answer for that.
So I think that I was talking to my girlfriends, and they make fun of me when I say that I'm a leader or a manager, because they challenge me and they say, would you be able to have gotten so far in a company with a different culture, or in a company that doesn't work remotely? For example, I was talking with a friend of mine, he's a manager too, and he meets people in person. So he has what we would call executive presence.
Yep.
So he looks the part. I don't.
Well, don't be so harsh. I mean, you said that you were working in your pajamas, but I never saw you in pajamas. And if those were pajamas, they are really put together, to be honest. So
yeah, but
professional even in a call.
You can look professional, but I think that one of the things that I like from working in remotely from a company like the one I work for is that it's beyond the way you look, it's beyond the way you speak, and it's more about if your actions and your words are in the right place. And I think that is something I'm also fond of. And it is there where I put the effort, not in how I look or the sound of my voice. I did at the beginning of my career, actually, I took trainings to try to lower my voice, to check if I could sound more like a leader, or I could look like a leader. And I'm like, I don't care if I sound or look like a leader. Maybe I'm just a different leader and I can inspire a different generation of them.
I think that was amazing, like that you already were preparing for the non-remote kind of work. It was not that long, honestly, and everything that you learn is like, who cares? Because here, its value is my impact and how I assess the others and how the goals are supported. So in that sense, I think that you see more difference between leading in remote versus leading in presence, in a sense, like one-on-ones. But what about the challenges? I mean, okay, we are talking about leadership. What are the challenges with these teams? We are talking about different cultures. We are talking about different habits. Like how you have adapted yourself and in general, like your time schedules, the way you talk, because we are both, I don't know if call it Latins, at least we are both Mediterraneans, that's for sure. And we have cultures that are similar, even though there is many differences, but we can relate kind of easily. But also I have been working with China and India, and I can already see many differences. So what were the challenges, or what are the challenges that you are currently seeing in those situations?
So I think the cultural aspect is fascinating. It's not, I see that as a challenge, but also as a part of that diversity that enriches the team. I remember a former colleague of mine that said this quote, India is a circus and China is an army.
With that sentence, I have to tell you that you got me the day that you told me that sentence, and also the reference to your colleague is like, I need to know more about her. I think she's interesting enough. But you can explain yourself a little bit through this.
So it's clearly a stereotype, and it was her opinion, but there is a very good book that I would recommend to everyone that wants to be or is already a global leader. That's called Cultural Map from Erin Meyer. And there's also a test you can do on her website. And basically, it explains you really well how different culture operates. For example, when you speak to an American, they prefer short and sweet, very concise messages, very clear, very driven on the outcome or call to action. When you speak to people in China, they prefer to have a lot of context, a lot of details. So based on when you talk to people in India, they're likely to have a lot more interaction and asking questions to absorb the content and challenge rather than the average person in China. Now, again, those are stereotypes. And when you work in a global company where there's a lot of cross-pollination between cultures, it tends to dilute. But I still feel that having some of those guidelines help you to approach people differently, approach communication differently.
Yeah, I think that you just made a really good point, because sometimes when, for example, myself, when you think about how to communicate with your team or with the other teams, you always need to have that in mind, aside from also personalities, types of personalities, and how people understand information or how they feel about the information display. You also need to have a little bit of reference and also be mindful, like that their way of communication might be different from yours. That is okay. You just need to both parties kind of understand each other, that maybe there are going to be like small gaps, like lost in translation things, if you want to call it. And that is kind of normal. I think that's a good point that you mentioned. I know that you also, as a director, you have many teams, and you were also talking about giving support to individuals and to teams. I am really curious to understand, is like, how do you give support to so many people? Or maybe you don't. I mean, maybe you don't, and it's like you only talk with one person the day. It's like, okay, that's my day off. So how do you organize that giving support?
Maybe I can share my last 2 roles and how I was offering support in different ways.
Go for it.
My previous role was head of customer experience for the IT department.
Mm-hmm.
So what I was doing was that probably I would say 40% of my agenda was filled with one-on-ones with people in product management roles or experience design roles, or some business analyst role with interest in customer experience. So by having all those one-on-ones that are repeating, you can you can check where people are, see if they need help, and understand how to support them or meet them where they are. Some people will want to talk about strictly work. Some people will want to talk about career advice, but that space is for them. And usually I leave, unless there's something urgent or critical or something that is not going as expected, that space is kept for them.
So you were bringing them the opportunity to have their kind of safe space with you, like, okay, this is for you to be able to communicate with me on whatever topic in general you would like to tackle. So we can tackle the regular evolution of the project, or we can tackle your career goals, or maybe your doubts about how to progress in the company, that kind of thing.
The other thing that maybe some naive people, corporate naive people maybe know, is that you don't support everyone at the same level. You try to find people that fall into some sort of high performance, high potential. I don't know if you've ever seen that grade, but there's a very famous grade that usually is used to assess people. It's not that we try to put people in a box, but sometimes you just have a feeling that someone is high potential, high performing. And in those individuals, maybe you want to invest more because you know you can have a return of investment quicker. Because at the end of the day, if those people get better, they can do more, and you can focus on other things that are more important.
Yeah, that's a good one that you mentioned that, because I happen never reflect on that so vividly, let's put it that way. But yes, the part of supporting thing is always tricky, like how I should distribute my time is like in which invest more and in which doesn't, because sometimes you have people that maybe are struggling more, then you invest more in them, and then you realize that maybe it was not the wiser kind of idea. And it's good that you point out that, because probably people that it's in the beginning stages of leadership is something that never think about it, and it's good that you mentioned that for them.
I think that the way I tried to prioritize was high performance, high potential. I was helping the individuals with their careers, try to push them to the next step. while people in critical position, for example, in critical projects, I was trying to help them with the work at hand. So that was in my previous role. In the current role,
the
again, is a
strategy
bit
is
different
cool.
because I need to build high-performing teams. So I spend a lot less time in one-on-ones, but I spend a lot of times creating an environment where leadership teams can discuss the important topics and be aware of what is happening. So it's less one-on-ones, and it's a lot of crafting an environment for a team of leaders to succeed.
Now you got me curious, like what would be your tools or an example of how you create those spaces in which those leaders can grow and also involve the team?
So I think some of that is down to knowing each other. So usual good practice are sometimes to do some team building activities or sharing. But then there are some very tactical things like having a chat where we can communicate asynchronously. So making sure that people provide updates, share what their challenges are. So I think a lot is about the communication and building trust and visibility. Then Trello boards. But I think the most important piece is also when we actually get together like once a week to ensure that we have an agenda, everyone is prepared to share their content. And everyone knows what everyone is working on, what are the highest priorities items, and all of those things. It's a lot of like soft skills and people skills.
Yeah, all of them. I think that you have all of them now. It's not easy, and I know it, but it's even more interesting when you explain it, which that also gives you the credibility that you have a really good communication skills, because this is a complex topic that you can easily explain to people that has never been involved in a comprehensive way. So that's something one of the things that you have cultivated during your career. That's at least my assumption.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, in this kind of podcast, I always only invite people that I admire. So it's impossible for me not to say good things about them. Otherwise, it's like why I'm doing a podcast, just to invite people I like and think and talk about their experiences and have this reflection, because that's the interesting bit of it. Otherwise, why to have these conversations? But anyway, that's me. I wanted to talk a little sensitive topic, maybe. So you let me know how do you feel about it, and it's okay to just not get into deep. But I'm really interested that now you are a director, and that implies responsibility, a lot of work, managing multiple things. And my question is how do you deal with the stress? Because you have a life and you live a life. So that's important to also mention that this woman is not only working, even though it seems like it's a lot of work. She has a life, she has a family, and she needs to be able to have both. So my main question is how do you deal with the stress now? And what are the differences that you have seen from nowadays to yourself when you were, 30 or 25 in New York?
This is a good question. And I think I'm quite proud about my journey with stress management.
Cool.
I think I touched a low point several years ago where I decided to see a psychologist. That is something that for me is very normal. To see a specialist, to seek help if there's something you're struggling with. So I decided to take on a journey to manage my anxiety. And I think a good part of that anxiety was coming from work. And after several sessions, we got to this statement that was a bit of a revolution for me. Now saying that seems very simple, but basically these psychologists told me, so you want to be a high performer. You have been a high performer your whole life, and you want to continue to be, from what you're saying. So he's telling me, if you want to be like who you are now, you don't have to try to avoid stress or to, you need to embrace it. You need to figure out a way to cope with it, because the options are, or you do things that don't stress you, but that wouldn't be you, or you continue to be you, but then you figure out what to do with the stress. You can't like complain about it. I was like, okay.
Like, okay, I'm really going to a psychologist to tell me that. Let me think about that. But yeah, it's really true, you know, that you just know, you just realize yourself. It's like, okay, that's true. So this is what I am. This is what I am in a sense, but I need tools to deal with that, how to cope with it.
And we draw a line of, like, imagine basically a simple graph with waves of my stress. And we realize that when I'm at the top of the stress, I'm also getting the most excitement. So I think that was that what changed in me was that it's not that I like being stressed, but I recognize when I'm stressed, and I know when it's good stress, and I know when it's not good stress. I try to have healthy waves. If you're always on top of the wave, I know that I'm going to burn out. But if I can keep the waves regular, I have enough time to have the excitement, the kick of excitement, rest a bit, kick of excitement, and rest a bit. I think I'm at a point where I've also learned to extend my tolerance for stress. For example, there are things that I can do now that felt very stressful a few years ago. For example, if you ask me to do a presentation to 100 people, I can probably prepare. If it's a topic I know, I can probably prepare in a couple of hours now. If you have asked me to do that like 3 years ago, I would have fainted.
No, really? I cannot imagine that.
And I think that the thing that you want to do, I don't think like that stress or that fear of being stressed should stop you. I think that with enough exposure, you can expand your comfort zone slowly to become who you want to be. I kind of wanted to be one person that is able to like speak at a conference with 1,000 people, or lead a meeting with 50 different stakeholders without having to shy away from it.
Yeah, that's super interesting, because how people deal with stress or even mental health, you know, and it's really interesting because everybody is approaching differently. Like, and first of all, in all cases, is first you need to understand yourself. What are you looking for? What are you exactly? And you discover, like, what it was more exciting is the right amount of stress. That the problem was like how to arrive to the right amount of stress period. And that is something that you have been working. And now that you are mentioning, I like also to talk with the teams or the people in the team, like to practice and to go to a therapist and to go to a professional, because I think that we have a lot of, we don't talk much about mental health because it's something that we need to be kind of ashamed. When it's like any other problem, you just put it right. Like if I have a pain in the knee, I will go to the doctor and nobody would get surprised, right? Why, if I have a pain in my work, I cannot go to the psychologist and be ashamed of it? That's something that luckily I'm hoping, to be honest, that we are just getting over it and just seeing therapists and psychologists, etc., like another regular doctor that tries to solve one issue that you have with your body, mind, soul, etc. So that's the idea. I have had an amazing time with you, Sarah. Yeah, this has been extremely cool, and I was lucky to have you like for 30 minutes. And to be honest, I would like to continue talking about these topics and other more, maybe in the future. And then, so that is me, like I don't know what to say, and I really enjoy this small piece of your wisdom that you share with all the listeners. And I will translate it also, the most important comments that you have already done in Spanish. So I will do it myself, unfortunately. So I will be me talking about what you have said. But I'm hoping that I can capture the essence of what you have been talking here and doesn't get lost in translation, as sometimes happen. But anyway, so you're more than welcome to come anytime to my table and talk with you.
Thank you.
Bienvenidas de nuevo. Bueno, las que habéis podido escuchar la entrevista con Sara, espero que mi inglés y su inglés haya sido lo suficientemente claro para que nos hayamos entendido. Las que no lo habéis podido escuchar entero porque vuestro inglés o como está grabado no acaba de ser el 100% vuestra predilección, tengo para vosotras los destacados, ¿vale? Esto también lo podéis ver en la cajita con el timeline. Un formato un poco tiempo-resultado, como si estuviéramos en el fútbol, que yo no soy nada pródiga en ello, pero bueno. En el minuto 1:50 hemos presentado en inglés a nuestra invitada, que es Sara. Sara es la directora actual de Estrategia en la compañía en la que estoy yo ahora mismo trabajando. Sara empezó con unos inicios un poco curiosos, que son los que podéis empezar escuchar a partir del minuto 3:53 aproximadamente. Nos explicaba que no era una persona que hubiese desde un principio de su vida tener muy claro lo que iba a hacer en esta vida. Nos contaba que las típicas preguntas que se hacían en el instituto de qué quieres ser de mayor, ella nunca lo tuvo claro. Y también nos comentaba que en este sentido el entorno en el que había crecido, en Italia, en un pueblo quizás un poco pequeñito, donde todo el mundo se conocía y que solo habían 4 o 5 opciones de trabajo serio, de trabajo rentable, como serían ser contable, trabajar en la banca, doctor, etcétera. Este tipo de roles más tradicionales a ella no le acaban de encajar y tiró más bien por lo que serían las artes. Cuando decidió precisamente esa opción, todo su entorno le dijo que no iba a ganarse la vida, que no era una forma de tener una vida próspera, etc. Y ella también nos reconocería que en el fondo habían tenido razón, pero que básicamente le motivó más el que le hubiesen puesto tantas pegas de alguna forma en el inicio como para decidirse precisamente ir por ese camino, el camino artístico. En un punto de su vida tuvo la oportunidad de alcanzar una beca que la llevó hasta Nueva York. Y ahí fue cuando a ella le abrió los ojos totalmente, porque pasaba de un entorno muy cerradito, como hemos comentado, a otro donde todas las posibilidades eran infinitas, gente que tenía 2 trabajos, sueños grandiosos, muy americano, como el American Dream total, que a ella eso le motivó muchísimo. Una de las anécdotas que nos contaba, y eso ha sido bastante divertido, era que uno de sus primeros trabajos en Nueva York era básicamente ser como curator, no sé traducir bien esa palabra, pero que estaba en contacto con obras de arte de millones de dólares y que ahora, pensándolo con perspectiva, estaba deseando que todos ellos tuvieran un buen seguro. Pero bueno, también en esa parte de su vida se dio cuenta que ella se sentía más cómoda, no tanto en esa parte del arte, sino lo que se llamaba en su momento webmaster, que básicamente, para que las personas que no lo habían oído nunca, y a mí ya casi ni me sonaba, eran las personas que se encargaban de las primeras webs, con los típicos diseños muy básicos. Y a partir de ahí también le surgió la oportunidad de poderse ir a estudiar a Sydney, Australia, un curso de UX, de User Experience, en una época en la que me comentaba que era hace unos 10 años atrás, no era una carrera ni una especialidad mainstream para nada, y eso le abrió aún más otras perspectivas de cómo resolver problemas. Pero después de haber trabajado también en ese ámbito, lo que se dio cuenta es que lo que a ella le interesaba era resolver problemas en sí mismo, no tanto ejecutarlos, como resolver problemas visuales con diseños. Le gustaba más el reto de poder atacar grandes problemas y buscar soluciones a ellas, que básicamente es lo que le ha permitido hoy en día ser lo que es directora de estrategia. Yo le preguntaba de cómo le podría explicar a tu abuela, por ejemplo, cuál es tu profesión, y hemos estado pues, riendo un poquito respecto a lo que ella pondría en LinkedIn, que es básicamente directora de estrategia, que trabaja con mano a mano con el Chief Innovator Officer, en este caso, pero que tanto a su madre como a su familia les dice que trabaja todo el día en pijama delante del ordenador, cosa que no acaba de ser de todo cierto. Cuando comentamos precisamente el tema de dress code, si le podemos llamar así, de lo que tenemos en remoto, una cosa que destacó y que nos comentaba y que le gustaba muchísimo era que ella tenía colegas que también eran directores en otras empresas, pero que su trabajo de alguna forma también se basaba mucho en su apariencia física. Con eso me refiero a la forma de vestir, una forma muy formal, clásica, si me apuras, trajes, camisas, etcétera, y que en cambio ella no estaba sujeta a estas reglas. ¿Qué quiere decir eso? Que lo que le gustaba de este trabajo y de esta compañía y lo que le atraía básicamente es que en ella se valoraban sus resultados. Daba igual que estuviera en pijama o en chándal. Lo importante era cómo transmitía las ideas, cómo se conseguían los objetivos, y eso era una de las cosas que más valoraba. Dentro de este mismo tema de qué se entiende dentro del mundo por ser un líder, le pregunté cómo había sido su experiencia trabajando en remoto y en asíncrono con equipos de Europa y Asia. En este caso ella está trabajando en la parte de Haití. Como nos comentaba, de si se lo tuviera que explicar a su abuela, es que en su empresa también tenían mucha tecnología y que para que funcionara correctamente para sus propios empleados necesitaban personas que trabajaran para mejorar día a día la misma. Entonces, dentro de estos retos culturales que hemos estado hablando, un punto muy divertido que nos ha comentado es un compañero suyo en un momento de trabajo hizo una comparación de los equipos con los que trabaja ella en Asia, que en este caso sería China e India, que era un poco como trabajar con cada uno de ellos. Trabajar con India era como un circo un poco, y trabajar con la China era como un ejército. Pero que más allá de bromas y prejuicios, que era un poco basado en ello, que a ella lo que le motivaba más precisamente estos resortes culturales, que en lo que sería, si hablamos de Estados Unidos, buscan un tipo de comunicación más directa, más orientada a resultados, más orientada a acciones. En cambio, China o incluso Asia necesitaban mayor contexto, les gustaba más, y ahí estaba la gracia o el reto de poder adecuar el mensaje y las necesidades del mismo a cada uno de los oyentes. Y eso era lo que le motivaba bastante. En el momento que hablamos cuando hablamos de motivación, También surgió el tema de cómo hacer mentoring y coaching a los equipos. Entonces ella me contaba que en sus experiencias pasadas, por ejemplo, su dedicación a las reuniones one-on-one, que serían de tú a tú, ella le dedicaba básicamente en su anterior trabajo, que era Lead the User Experience, un 60% de su tiempo, mientras que el resto de reuniones, por así decirlo, o de organización era un 40%, y que se centraba en individuos. En cambio, el rol que ahora tiene, lo que necesita es crear equipos altamente eficientes, y eso demandaba más crear un entorno más que tener esos one-on-ones. ¿Qué quiere decir? Que ella creaba un entorno para que las discusiones y los temas pudieran avanzar, y se centraba básicamente en las personas que había identificado como high potential, o sea, que tenían altas capacidades para seguir y para liderar. Así que reduciendo un poco su nivel de compromiso con todo el mundo y escogiendo de una forma más consciente a quién dedicar el soporte o no y qué tipo de soporte. En ese punto también empezamos a discutir un poco, teniendo en cuenta que ella es directora, que tiene bastantes equipos, que tiene todos estos objetivos, a su vez, cómo lidiaba con el estrés. Y nos contó de forma muy interesante cómo había, gracias a haber tenido un bajón o un pico, digamos, de estrés, pudo contactar con una terapeuta psicóloga y le pudo ayudar a descubrir un poco qué eran las cosas que le motivaban y qué era ella, básicamente. Y con qué era ella me refiero a que descubrió que realmente el estrés le ayudaba a la creatividad, pero lo que tenía que entender es cómo lidiar ese estrés y identificar cuál era el estrés que la impulsaba a crear más y cuál era el estrés que la drenaba. Entonces, en ese camino, que ha ayudado unos cuantos años, nos contaba cómo no tenía que huir del estrés y cómo su tolerancia al estrés se había aumentado con el tiempo, exponiéndose a situaciones que al principio le generaban muchísimo estrés. Y me puso un ejemplo muy claro que me dijo, si hace 3 años me hubieses planteado hacer una conferencia desde cero, con un tema que yo sepa, pero desde cero a 100 personas, me habría desmayado. Pero ahora, si me lo dices, como ya he estado expuesta a todo eso, todo ese tipo de situaciones, en un par de horas sé que soy capaz de crearte una presentación y ejecutarla sin ningún problema. Y básicamente estuvimos hablando sobre el estrés y es como un poco exponerte más a esta situación que da en estrés, quizás de una forma más consciente, pero de una forma más moderada y juiciosa. Del estilo, no tienes por qué huir siempre del estrés, pero tienes que ser muy consciente dónde están tus límites o qué es el estrés que te perjudica, básicamente. Y este sería un poquito el resumen de lo que Sara hoy nos ha estado contando en inglés. Me he olvidado una cosa que es importante para las que no lo sepáis, pero lo primero que le comenté es por qué estábamos hablando en inglés, y ella muy amablemente nos explicó a todas que básicamente ella es italiana, yo soy española, y el idioma en el que nos comunicamos de forma más fluida nuestras ideas es el inglés. Entonces iba a ser un poco complicado que las dos pudiéramos tratar este tema en Spanglish, Españitelindis, no sé cómo ni cómo decirlo, pero básicamente que no es proficiency en castellano y le iba a resultar mucho más complejo. Espero sobre todo que me deis vuestros comentarios sobre qué os ha parecido este nuevo formato, qué os ha parecido mi resumen, quizás demasiado, queréis algo más extenso, y sobre todo acordaros que podéis contactarme en todas las redes sociales, Mesa para una podcast, tanto .com como en Instagram. Estoy encantadísima de recibir vuestras preguntas, comentarios y que lo soltéis todo. Bueno, chicas y chicos, no vamos a discriminar tampoco. Me alegro muchísimo de que hoy hayamos estado juntas y me despido hasta nuestra próxima aventura.